People who ended a relationship because Reddit told them to. Do you regret it? Serious. So I didn't exactly end my relationship because Reddit told me to, but Reddit absolutely gave me the perspective I was having a hard time seeing on my own. My ex-wife was cheating, and I believed that there might be a way to reconcile and keep the relationship alive. But when I posted in our relationship advice, people's comments helped me understand that I was pretty clearly ready to end things. Turns out it was the greatest decision I could have ever made. 2 years later and I'm the happiest I've ever been. So thanks, friends. Bro, I actually remember reading your post years ago. It's so awesome you're doing well. What you went through would destroy most people. I left my ex in October and finally ended things in January. The relationship had been over for quite a while before that. I was staying because I was afraid that I would never feel love again. I stayed because I uprooted my whole life for this man who lied and cheated and had a hidden addiction because I didn't want to admit defeat. One day I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself. Something made me look back through my Reddit comments, and even the internet could see that my comment was desperate. I had been emotionally abused and manipulated, and my self-worth was in the shitter. It's been hard. I broke my own heart when I called it off. However, I knew if I stayed I would lose myself entirely. Thank you to the kind people who saw my comment. I saved myself from a terrible, sad, and dangerous situation. I wish I had ended my previous relationship when Reddit told me so. I mean, it ended happening eventually, but it would have been so much better before. I ended my relationship with my father after receiving some really great advice on a throwaway account. He's an abusive alcoholic and I have been making excuses for his abuse for years. I really needed to hear what was said to me, and going no contact has been the healthiest boundary I have ever set for myself. I thought the guy was playing games with me and Reddit told me to just stop trying. Turns out he just didn't like me. Was definitely worth because I'm now dating someone who cares about me. Good for you. I cussed my mother out. I post on our Just Know family a lot, and at first I was like, that's a bit extreme, but then I started to see a bit more clearly with every post. I have never known this level of peace. No regrets. My daughter is happier. I'm happy. My marriage is thriving. I own my own business. My PTSD isn't as debilitating as it was. For example, a year ago, my panic attacks have subsided. My hands don't shake constantly. I'm acknowledging my trauma day by day. It's wonderful. Hard, but wonderful. I still struggle with this. I went no contact with my parents after lurking there for a while, then gradually cut contact with my other family members. I feel so much less stressed, but I feel lonely sometimes and a little guilty. I posted in our relationship advice almost 2 years ago about something that had happened with my then husband. All comments told me to run, that it would only escalate from there, that it was abusive. I thought it was ridiculous, deleted the post and tried to fix things with him. After a few months he wouldn't change his stance, and did start escalating. I left him. It has been really rough at times, but I haven't regretted my decision even for a second. If I hadn't made that post, who knows if I would have realized it was abusive. When I first made my account, years ago, it was to seek relationship advice. No one ever told me specifically that I should end it, but many people helped me to notice patterns and unhealthy behaviors that I was questioning and doubting. They offered support when I decided to end it. It was the best decision, and looking back I only wish I had ended it way sooner. I'm in the ignored Reddit's advice and stayed with the person for 2-3 years group despite everyone telling me not to. In hindsight, Reddit and my friends definitely made good points, and if I could go back and listen, I probably would. I think I learned a lot about what I want in a relationship and a partner over that time though, so maybe I don't fully regret it. I'd like to think it's made me develop as a person. Regardless, Reddit was probably right. Listening to stranger on internet is a thing. It can make you aware of things you did not see or want to see. But experience is even more important. Now you know what mistakes you've made and you don't need Reddit anymore. So even if that sounds stupid, it wasn't a bad choice after all. My wife got an account 4 years ago to post on our relationship advice some of the things my mom had been saying and doing to us and our kid. We eventually had a conversation with her about how the way she was treating us was unkind. She took it poorly, and we haven't talked since. I'd known my mom had always treated people like trash, but hearing Reddit call the behavior narcissism and abuse was eye-opening to me and led me to a number of books and therapy that has helped a lot and working to recover from 20 some years of that. We didn't end the relationship with my mom 100% on the basis of Reddit's advice, but it definitely contributed. Don't regret it. I think in some cases only a stranger is capable of giving an unbiased point of view on something that your real life friends might be unwilling to admit for fear of hurting you. But in the same vein, Reddit is wrong a lot. If you describe your situation fairly and accurately and most everyone responding says break up, they are probably right. I suspect the ARPs sometimes leave out details that would make them look somewhat worse, but still if what they say about their partner is accurate then the advice is probably good. I think a lot of people who post there do so because they already want to break up, they're just looking for confirmation. Absolutely, when I was ready to dump my ex I thought about posting here just for encouragement, maybe even for advice on how to do it right. I didn't end up doing it but it was on my mind a lot, and I think someone else summed it up best. If you're posting to a group of 5 million strangers to ask if you should break up, your relationship is already on the rocks. I posted in RMIDarsole a while ago about one of my friends having a girlfriend who refused to be in the same room with me because she had a phobia of dwarfs, and I am a dwarf, and found the very idea of me disgusting. He would just apologize on her behalf and hoped everything would be okay. I can understand that phobias are irrational, and to some extent, she can't help it, but her complete lack in wanting to talk or explain things to me at all, even through text or on the phone, has really bothered me, and him constantly excusing her behavior, too. Like, I couldn't even go round to his place, because she would be there. It was fricked, and I felt like dirt, or some kind of freak from a sideshow that had to be batted away for my unsightliness. I finally listened to the comments from that thread and cut ties with him, and I'm not gonna lie, it did hurt, and it was hard, because I did like him as a friend, but he was okay with me being treated as less than human. So frick that. I'm in a good place now, and it feels like it was the right thing to do. I gave him plenty of chances. Mad respects, dude. The way you're unapologetically sticking to your interest and well-being, while still showing empathy not only to his POV but even her side of it, that takes kindness, resilience and a strong center. Truly inspirational. I came on Reddit to receive some advice when dating my now ex. Most of them concluded with commenters saying it's up to you what you want to do, but if I were you, it would be better to just let her go. When we broke up, Reddit gave me good advice on coping. I still have some questions now and again, but I keep asking so many questions. Better not be a burden to communities. Reddit is many millions of people. If you ask a question every day, even for a very long time, the majority of people seeing your question will never have seen your other questions. I wouldn't worry about it. From passing comments I was made aware it was abusive. I was still holding out hope of it working out, but due to the advice of various redditors and subreddits I pressed charges for domestic abuse last week. He was arrested. It's been the freaking hardest thing I've ever done as I still love him. But knowing that there has been support on here through it all helped me make that step and get through it. I mean, I accused someone of cheating because Reddit agreed that the circumstances looked really weird. He wasn't, and we split up. There's always great advice in the mix, but there's nuance to every relationship that strangers online simply don't have access to. Best advice is to trust but verify, unless you have solid proof you're just gambling at the end of the day. I should have heeded the advice and divorced, instead of being the only one committing all of myself into making it work. I would have avoided 2+ painful years and most likely wouldn't have attempted suicide. I've thrived since moving on. I'm the happiest I've been in my life. My current partner is incredible, caring, compassionate, and supportive. My career has taken off and I'm achieving things I'd only daydreamed about. It's a wonder what a healthy relationship with myself and others does for you physically, mentally, and emotionally. It really makes a difference. Happy you found that. Years ago I asked for relationship advice on a throwaway account. I knew I needed to end it, but I had low self-esteem and no model of a healthy functioning relationship. It gave me the strength I needed and I ended it. After that I did a lot of self-help and therapy and started to put up healthy boundaries. So much happier now and the quality of my dating life really shot up. Number. Well, I was on one of the subreddits Discord and I was explaining my situation where I was talking about how my girlfriend was flirting with other guys over text message. I wanted to convince myself that it was nothing and I was overreacting. Reddit came through and told me that it's not worth it because if she's willing to do once she will do it again, and I broke up with her. This was maybe 2 weeks ago. I am more lonely, but I would rather be lonely than have a girlfriend that's cheating on me. Wow, this blew up. I was on a lonely Discord. Whenever I get, very short, very rarely, the feeling of being lonely, I think of the things I like about myself. That helps almost every time. I actually had posted for advice about a specific issue we were having, and the redditors showed me that this one smaller issue was actually part of a much bigger problem in our relationship. Initially I was very resistant and was even making excuses for him. But I like to think that over time, the advice here was the final pieces of the puzzle telling me I needed to leave. And yes, it absolutely was the right decision. It just took me a long time and a few external pressures to realize it. On an old account I posted asking for help trying to work out if this guy was into me as much as I was into him, or if I was just being strung along. Resounding consensus was that I should just give up, and I was gutted. But I just felt like there was something there and I stupidly kept going. Except, it wasn't stupid. He was just a bit shy and that had translated as aloof. 8 years later we're married and had our first baby last year. So nice to see a happy ending. Glad you didn't throw in the towel. Capital X. I ended relationship with my bully who apologized for bullying me. I was a Muslim. She and her friends bullied me because I didn't wear hijab, didn't know how to read Quran and didn't know how to shalit. I went into non-Muslim kindergarten, and my parents was thinking of sending me to non-Muslim middle school too. But stuffs happen. After we finished high school, she asked around for my phone number and reconnected to apologize. I'm thankful. But then she started to make me her therapist to share her mental illness. Muslims aren't open about it. I was miserable. Why should I care about someone who destroyed my self-esteem, gave me anxiety, phobia with my own religion, and my future? I was extrovert kid till I was bullied. Asked Reddit. They convinced me to block her. I did. My life is now peaceful. I still have anxiety thinking if she will try to reach me again, but for now it's all good and quiet. Honestly, I wish I knew about Reddit when I was questioning whether or not to disown my father. It was the obvious choice, but it was difficult for me to make on my own and without advice. I regret not listening to my gut feeling. I asked for advice about a guy I was getting to know and maybe I didn't use the right words. But most answers inferred I was being arrogant, thinking I deserved better, and overly sensitive about some comments the guy had made over my physical appearance, and that he was probably just joking. I ended up dating the guy for several years and I was never okay with these types of jokes about my appearance, and he was often dismissive towards me in other ways. Maybe these comments actually were part of his sense of humor, but we didn't quite click. Whatever the reason, the truth is that he was just not the person for me, and the fact that I was even asking for advice on Reddit after a couple dates should have been a red flag I just didn't see. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I guess Reddit advice needs to be taken with a grain of salt, namely that sometimes the first cluster of people seeing your post are mostly teenage boys projecting their own insecurities, so be careful. Nah, I already wanted to break up. Once I got to the posting on Reddit stage, it was just me venting and psyching myself up. I cut it off and immediately felt free F. Nope, it was smart for me to do. We are better as friends, I believe. IDK how she is right now though, sort of seems like she's snapping a bit, so I might have to distance more, or IDK, it's odd now. Imo, there definitely needs to be a period of no contact before you can be friendly with an ex again. Trying to stay friends immediately after is a recipe for disaster, even if the breakup is mutual. RX no contact. I have my doubts about some of the people on this site. but based on what I've seen in relationship advice, I would say that most of the time it is good advice to end the relationship. Why? Well, half of the posts there have this energy. Reddit. My so choked my dog to death in front of me. Had sex with both my parents and gave them an STD. Deleted all my 14-year-old WoW and RuneScape characters. And pee in my mouth while I was drowning. But I still love her. What should I do? I'm obviously exaggerating, but the posts there get absolutely absurd. People get donkey brains when they're in a relationship. I like to tell people to pretend they're watching a movie of themselves and think to themselves what they'd be telling their character to do while watching that movie. Probably not the best advice for every situation, but I only use it for the obvious get the heck out of there for your safety or other extreme cases. Years ago I made a throwaway account to talk about one of my exes who was very clingy and seemingly didn't want to improve his life. Even though the post itself didn't gain a lot of traction, everyone who did see it told me to break up with him. So I did. I don't regret it. He was a nice person, but he had a lot of issues that I was too young to help him with. And judging from his Facebook, he hasn't changed much over the years either. They never do until they want to. It's always the hardest thing to watch. Haven't made a thread myself but have been lurking in a lot checking out advice because I didn't wanna make a post myself due to my ex being on Reddit too. Without going into too much detail, I did break up with my ex and I don't regret it. The important thing is that in the end it's still your own decision. Take it as advice. Reddit can be really good at that, but don't allow them to decide in your relationship. You may regret it at some point, but I have made the experience that it was worth it. I posted a few times about my ex on a throwaway. Everyone kept telling me to run, but I didn't think it was as bad as they made it sound. I kept trying to justify his actions because everyone else saw him as a monster and I didn't yet. I stayed way longer than I should have, but I think I needed to figure things out for myself. On the flip side, I posted about my current so when I met him. Things I wasn't so sure about people told me were green flags and to go for it. I'm so happy now and so glad I found him when I did. Reddit can really be helpful sometimes. I instead found my girlfriend through Reddit while not even looking for one. Been going for 1.5 years and it's amazing. Never expected Reddit to have such an impact in my love life. People always complain when those subs tell people to break up and sometimes it's not necessary. But some of the stories in those subs are pretty crazy. Like my husband choked me because he didn't like his dinner, or my girlfriend held a gun to my head because I snore. Obviously those are true, but it's the level of stuff in those subs. I wish I listened when Reddit told me to leave. I posted in our relationship advice several times about arguments I'd had with my then boyfriend, and every time, people would tell me that he was an butthole. We were both so young, and hadn't been together very long anyway, so why don't I end it? And every time, I let him. I should have broken it off at 8 months the first time I posted for advice. Definitely should have broken it off when the reason I was posting went from wanting unbiased advice from strangers to me being too embarrassed to confide in my friends. But instead I stayed for a year and a half and ended up traumatized by the end of the relationship. I know a year and a half isn't a long time in the grand scheme of things, but it's too long to put up with a relationship as toxic and incompatible as mine was. I remember reading a story where a guy thought his girlfriend was cheating because she lied about being with a friend when she wasn't, but it turns out she was buying him a pet snake as a surprise. Half of the people in that thread told him that she was cheating and to dump her. Good thing he didn't listen to them. Nope, not at all. She had severe PTSD, schizophrenia, and anxiety, the likes of which I ever seen. I tried my best to help her, but I have mental health problems of my own and I am good at giving advice, but I am not a certified psychiatrist. She needed professional help, yet she refused to get any. I don't have the emotional capacity for a relationship with someone with those types of problems. On a throwaway account I posted about how to approach a guy friend that was creepy towards my female friends because he had recently crossed a line with one of my new friends. Every comment was, why would you be friends with someone you have to warn women about? You're a terrible friend for allowing your female friends around him, etc. It opened my eyes that I was sacrificing my friend's comfort and safety because I was non-confrontational and made excuses that he was otherwise a good friend. I finally called him out on it and gave him a chance to admit he had a problem and get help. He came up with every excuse in the book and blamed women for finding him creepy and had a "oh woe's me" attitude. My boyfriend at the time, who was also really close with him, realized how bad it was when I explained it and he ripped him a new one, verbally. I then got him kicked out of the friend group of mostly guys, and then it came to light that he raped someone he dated previously. I also had girls of the friend group come to me about how uncomfortable he made them feel, but didn't think anyone would believe them or that they were maybe overreacting, and now that he's out of the friend group they feel a huge weight lifted. So thank you Reddit for giving it to me real and ripping me a new one. I only wish I had done it sooner. The thing is, telling your friend or relative to break up with an obviously bad partner is a socially risky move. People know that, and are often reluctant to voice their concerns or objections, for the sake of prudence and discretion. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Relationships are messy, and it sucks to get into a situation where now it's uncomfortable with your friend because you told him to break up with his crazy girlfriend. The internet doesn't care for these emotional landmines. People are more willing to tell their honest thoughts to strangers on the internet because they won't have to deal with awkwardness at the next reunion. It's just not a factor, so people are likely to get a different perspective than what they'd get from their more biased or careful friends. At the same time, it might be an edgy teenager who is giving you advice, so apply common sense in generous doses. I did this a while back, see history if interested, and I followed the general advice to leave his butt. Best decision I ever made, and I got to keep my dog. The outside perspective helps so much when you've been gaslit for years and increasingly isolated from friends, family. Nope. If anything, it helped provide perspective on my ex and how much she was gaslighting me. Do miss the security goat at her place though. He was cool. Yes and no. I'm a single dad now and living in poverty. Work a dead-end job at one of the worst grocery chains ever. I don't get enough sleep, and the ex-wife constantly coming up with bulls regarding our kid still tries to gaslight me and manipulate me, and apparently she's living in happiness and joy. Who knows if it's the truth though? I don't have a lot of hope for the future, or of ever being in any kind of relationship ever again. Everything I do is for my kid, and I just don't have the energy or time for much beyond that. But would this be any different if we were still together? Probably not. But I'm no longer dealing with the ex constantly, and I do get a couple hours a week of time to myself, though I usually just end up falling asleep reading a book or playing a video game. And I got one really good friend who tries his best to keep my spirits up and make me feel connected to the world, so it isn't all bad. Reddit told me I was the butthole, so I fixed myself and it turned out to be a great relationship after that, although we're not together anymore. Definitely don't regret listening to the advice I was given here. Our relationships told me to leave my ex a year before I did. On our 5th anniversary she came out as trans. On our 6th she had completely changed personalities. If I'd listened to them, it'd have left before she started hitting and choking me. But I did listen before we got to the 7th anniversary, and I still think about the advice. It made it a lot easier once I was ready to go. I once typed a long post to aim a thesis. It ended up being too long, so in the process of shortening it I structured my thoughts and understood my own situation. I cut off my so-called friends as a result. So yes, Reddit helped and I don't regret. I had the same question to myself and used to regret it, but now I think it's for the best. Besides, I nor anyone will ever know what would happen if I stayed. One thing I learned, though, any advice from Reddit or otherwise shouldn't be taken as is. Everything depends on the situation, about which the one who know the best is ourselves. Absolutely not. Years ago I came lurking for advice over some dude and Reddit bang on pointed out the obvious. I realized that, when I'm on rose-colored glasses, Redditors give much more practical perspective and call out on the BS than my IRL friends because your friends are your surroundings. They would be biased. They have the same approach. It can be a cultural factor as well. But overall, men are wired similar everywhere. so global opinions always weigh more here. I was in a relationship with benefits and I fell in love with her. She didn't fall in love with me, so I started looking for other girls. One evening I had a drink with a girl that was a friend of one of my friends and we had a pretty nice chat. Later that evening we went to a club and danced together. I kissed her the same night and bought her some food after the club. We met for a coffee a few days later and again it was a great day. 2 days later I asked a friend what I should do. Stay in the relationship with benefits or trying to build a relationship with the new girl. He told me I should go for the new girl, but he didn't completely convince me. So I went to Reddit and asked for help. Everyone told me I should try it with the new girl, so that's what I did. We're happy together for 2 years soon and it definitely was the best decision I ever made. She truly is everything I could dream of and I still love her with everything I got. If you want I can search for the post back then and post it here if anyone cares. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.